magic number.
Good morning. My name is Tammy Smith, your worship leader for this morning's service, and this is Common Ground, our celebration of worship for people of many paths who gather to share in the responsible search for meaning and truth. This is a warm and open community where all who come with open minds and kind hearts are welcome, regardless of ability, age, race, gender identity, or sexual orientation. We hope that all who join us today find this a safe place to worship. Now, please greet the people next to you. You'll have time to greet everyone else during today's potluck after service. Building bridges. Oh, no, there'll be a moment of silence. Please remain standing and join us in a moment of silence, followed by our gathering song. Now, as you are willing and able, please join the Come As You Are choir in our opening song, Building Bridges. And Kimala will talk to us about the song.
Well, it's a round, you know how we enjoy round. So we'll sing it through once all together, and then, let's see, I think it's about 7. Then everybody in front of this row where I'll be standing will start singing it again. And, you know, once they'll sing Building Bridges Between Our Divisions. And when they start singing I Reach Up to You, those of us in the back will start singing it again. And we'll sing it twice like that as a round. And when you get to the end of singing it that third time, you just keep singing the last line till everybody's done. It'll be fun.
You got that right.
Sure. There is mine. Oh, yeah, everybody in front of here is
follow us.
one. In front of here being what? The wall. Okay.
So the front is number 1?
Just between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, my friends, our voices and reach out to me. With all of our voices and all our visions, I reach out to you. Will you reach
We're getting good at that. This is the fire of our faith. As today's speaker, our own Quincy Harper, lights our chalice flame, let us say these words together. A pause as we find a lighter. We seek our place in this world to our heart's deep questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice flame remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, and of many truths from many generations. Thank you, Quincy. Sorry for not being prepared. I invite you to join me in a renewal of our sacred promises. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to the serving need, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. As you are seated, please move toward the walls to make it easier for folks still arriving to find seats. Also know you may enjoy the service remotely upstairs in the loft on our large screen TV. Today, in religious education, the children will explore the practice of opening to ongoing revelation and the search for truth. Next Sunday begins our new monthly theme, What Does It Mean to Be a People of Belonging? Learning what history do we belong to? Today, the youth will join us for our Sunday potluck. Next week, the youth group will begin their practice of a new skit, Startle, the story of the average yellow star. We belong to the great circle of life and death. At this time, children are invited to take part in religious education. Let us send them out with these words. We pass this flame of religious freedom from generation to generation. Today's call to worship is by Henry Novin. Each day holds a surprise, but only if we expect it can we hear, see, or feel it when it comes to us. Let's not be afraid to receive each day's surprise. Whether it comes to us as sorrow or as joy, it will open a new place in our hearts, a place where we can welcome new friends and celebrate more fully our shared humanity. Now, please stand as you're willing and able and join us in our worship song, Come and Go With Me to That Land. This is a traditional gospel blues song written and recorded in 1930 by Blind Willie Johnson, a street performer and a preacher from Pendleton, Texas.
Join us as we sing, Come and Go With Me to That Land.
Please be seated. Quincy Harper is a senior at E.A. Young Academy, where she currently serves as National Honor Society President, head prefect of her student house, and is a student advisor for the Ecology Club. In addition, she is a contributing artist for Aphelion, a 501(c)(3) in which she is a founding member. Outside of school, Quincy is a staff writer for Young Men's Magazine and works for Starbucks in North Richland Hills. Following graduation, she plans to pursue a pre-med biomedical degree. She is the daughter of Austina and Glenn Harper. Let's welcome Quincy to our podium.
Hi guys. Full disclosure, I've had a cold for about 2 weeks, so my voice is kind of annoying and grating and nasally, but we'll get through it together. We're a community. We'll be good. I've got the clicker. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about my generation. We are the youngest generation alive today, Generation Z. There are several million of us, and we're now getting to the age where we're entering the workforce and nearing the end of higher education, which is really interesting. I personally am turning 18 in 2 weeks, so I'm in that weird stage of my life where I'm almost an adult, but I still live with my parents. I'm a senior in high school, so the future is no longer this like abstract thing that's somewhere over there. You know, I'll get there one day. I'm there now, which is really scary. So we're going to kind of get into what that's like. The first thing is, who's in Gen Z anyways? Well, the Pew Research Center defines Gen Z as starting in 1997, which is when Fargo came out. And it stretches all the way to today in 2019. So 1997 is when Marissa, who leads RE, was born, and she's a senior at UTA. 2001 was when Sasha Obama was born, as well as myself. 2009, Kaylee Tresher, the Tresher daughter, was born. And then in 2015, Saint West, Kanye West's oldest son, was born. So that gives you kind of a timeline of like the ages and who all is there. So kind of getting into the defining features of Gen Z, the sort of bones of our generation, the first thing is that 9/11 is seen as a historical event rather than a personal one. 9/11, of course, happened in 2001. It happened a month before I was born. So while many of you guys probably have very distinct personal memories of it, you know, where I was on that day, what happened to me, who I knew that was impacted by it, you know, kind of what the world looked like immediately after 9/11, my generation doesn't have those memories. I learned about it through my parents and through other adults and through my school. To me, it's a historical event. I don't have any memories. The next thing is that Gen Z sees there to be a human link between climate change and sees there to be a link between climate change and human activity. And they claim responsibility both for solving climate change, but also for the creation of the phenomenon. And also Gen Z values diversity more than any other generation, and this is coming from the Pew Research Center's studies. And that's both gender equality, gender diversity, sexual diversity, and racial diversity, especially in the workplace and in educational environments. And then we also have school shootings. I'm going to get more into those in a minute because those are a really hot button topic today. But just to give you some context, Columbine happened in 1999. So that's 2 years after the start of Gen Z. So every child who is in Gen Z would have started education after the shooting. So it would have been a prominent feature of American public discourse. And the last thing is the mental health crisis. And I'll touch briefly on this. But today, mental health is a very strong concern of this generation and something that's kind of shaping our lives and the futures we lead. So alongside defining elements, there's also the formative events that have happened. So we, of course, have 9/11 and Columbine and also Sandy Hook, which happened in 2012. So these are two really big school shootings that have kind of highlighted the problem. We also have Parkland, which I believe happened in 2018, as well as some others. We have 9/11 in 2001. We have the creation of Facebook in 2003, which kind of ushered in the age of social media. So Gen Z children have obviously grown up with social media. Most of us have social media. Most of us use it on a daily basis, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter or even Facebook. We have the Great Recession from 2007 to 2009, which we know obviously impacted human lives long after 2009. Some of us are probably still feeling some of the effects of it, even now, a decade later. But yeah, I grew up under it. Then we have Obama's election in 2008. To give you some context, I was in first grade when Obama was elected. I'm an adult now. That's weird. Yeah. But it kind of changed how we see the president's role, because it's not just an old WASP. It is not just a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant man. It can be anyone who we think is responsible enough to lead our country, whether that's an Oompa Loompa or a strong, wise, intelligent black man. I'm not biased, but he led a campaign of hope that really brought the American people together, and that was really beautiful to see as a child. And then the final thing is marriage equality in 2015. So that's obviously when we legalized same-sex marriage across the country, which is a really beautiful thing to have happened in my childhood. I'm really proud that I can marry whoever I want when I'm an adult. And you'll see that I drew the line for formative events at 2015. I intentionally didn't include the 2016 election because I see that less of a formative event and more of a current challenge and thing we're struggling with today. So yeah, speaking of current challenges, that's kind of the next thing I'm going to get into. So the first thing is college, and this is both getting to college and life after college. Right now, Congress is currently talking about the student debt crisis. And the figures that I'm going to be showing you are from this summer. Last week, we actually had new figures coming out on college debt, but I had already made the PowerPoint, so I'm sorry. But yeah, as of this summer, we had $1.6 trillion worth of student debt in this country, and that's spread out amongst 44 million students, which, to give you an idea of how many people that is, that's 1/10 of the United States was in student debt this summer. And that's more debt than outstanding credit card debt and auto debt. Not combined, separate, but yeah, that's $1.6 trillion. And this is creating a huge impact on our ability to start futures, to get married, to buy houses, the stability of our lives going forward, because college is an investment. And something that people talk about is fiscal responsibility amongst this generation. You know, maybe if you didn't buy so many Xbox games, you could have afforded to go to college. But the thing is, costs are increasing 8 times faster than wages are, which is insane. You know, my parents, they paid less for college, and they also made less money. But over time, there's been this huge disconnect between the rate at which we're making more money and how much money we're spending just to get that higher education. And having a college degree really is the gatekeeper for a lot of careers because it's the standard now. 2/3 of American jobs require a college degree. And then the third thing is the College Board. If you're not familiar with the College Board, they're actually the predatory and monopolizing non-for-profit that created the SAT. I personally have given them over $2,000 just to take exams. Nothing else. Not even to apply to college, just to take tests. I've spent over 2 days in testing rooms, and that's everything from the SAT to AP exams, which allow me to save money by exempting out of college classes. Or if I want to study abroad, I've got to have APs. If you want to get scholarship money because you can't afford to go to college, you might have bid for National Merit Scholar, in which case you took the PSAT. And then there's also SAT subject tests if you want to go to a more selective school. All of these are run by the College Board, and they each cost from anywhere from $100 with SAT subject tests to $350 to the AP capstone courses, which I'm taking because they're trying to replace the International Baccalaureate degree through College Board. And it's really scary. And some organizations like the ACT are attempting to kind of take College Board off of its throne through the ACT exam. But if you want to go to college, you will go through the College Board. Even here, if you want to go to TCC, you're required to take the Accuplacer, which is also a College Board exam. So, and then the last thing is kind of the cultural impact of the college admissions process. Everyone from Felicity Huffman to Lil Uzi Vert, who is a rapper, are being kind of implicated in it. So we have the college admissions scandal, which broke, I believe, last year. So Felicity Huffman, Lori Loughlin, and several other famous figures were implicated in it, basically because they were paying to have SAT scores doctored or to make it seem like their child was doing rowing, but they weren't. So that's cool. But yeah, these actors and actresses are all now facing major fines, as well as minor prison sentences that they'll probably weasel their way out of. I mean, if you can get a kid into USC, you can get out of prison. And then Lil Uzi Vert, he is a rapper, and I think it speaks a lot to the state of a generation when children are no longer asking for autographs and selfies and T-shirts from favorite celebrities, but are instead asking for their student debt to be forgiven by celebrities. And that's what Lil Uzi Vert is actually doing right now. He is actually paying off one student's student debt. Taylor Swift and Nicki Minaj are doing similar things. And then I have this video. Are we going to be able to watch it? Sweet. This is Hassan Minaj. He is a late-night talk show host for Patriot Act on Netflix. This is his congressional testimony on the student crisis.
I want to thank Chairwoman Maxine Waters.
I'm also going to mention that some of the figures in here are a little bit different. He didn't cite his sources, so I went and found my own ones, and they gave me kind of different figures. So.
I'm a Muslim, and I want to thank Chairwoman Maxine Waters for the opportunity to testify, and I would like to thank Ranking Member Patrick McHenry for taking the time to Google who I am.
Cute. Very
My
cute.
name is Hassan Minhaj. I'm a Muslim, and I condemn radical Islamic terrorism. That has nothing to do with anything. I just want that on the record. It's good to get ahead of these things. Now, Chairwoman Waters invited me here today because I host a political comedy show on Netflix called Patriot Act, which means I may owe some of you guys royalties. DM, we can talk later. Now, we recently did an episode on the student loan crisis, and it really hit home with our audience because 44 million Americans owe more than $1.6 trillion of student loan debt. In fact, the day we shot our episode, we polled our studio audience. It was only about 200 people. In that room alone, had over $6 million of student loan debt. Now, granted, our audience is mainly unemployed poli-sci majors, but that's still a lot of money. Now, this issue is sidelining millions of Americans. People are putting off marriage, kids, homeownership, and retirement, especially my generation. So I'm 33, and growing up, it was drilled into our heads. You gotta go to college if you want a middle-class job. And we even tell kids today, look, if you don't go to college, you might as well get a face tattoo. And then they point to Post Malone, and we're like, okay, that's one guy. He's a very popular musician. But it's true, 2/3 of all jobs in America require at least some college. This is the standard now. And that wasn't the case when most members of this committee were in school. And you paid far less for your degrees. That's not speculation. We looked up where the 60 members of this committee went to college and what your school's tuition was at that time. Even adjusting for inflation, college cost way less across the board. So, Chairwoman Maxine Waters, your tuition at Cal State LA in 1971 was the equivalent of about $1,000 a year. Today, Cal State costs well over $6,000. That's more than a 500% jump. Congressman King, in 1965, Congressman King paid the equivalent of almost $10,000 a year at St. Francis College. Today, St. Francis costs over $25,000. On average, this entire committee graduated from college 33 years ago and paid an inflation-adjusted tuition of $11,690 a year. Today, the average tuition at all of your same schools is almost $25,000. That's a 110% increase over a period of time when wages have gone up only 16%. So people aren't making more money, and college is objectively way more expensive. You see what's happened? We've put up a paywall to the middle class. And if there's one thing Americans don't deserve more of, it's paywalls. That's why we put up our entire show for free on YouTube. It's also because you can't really find anything on Netflix. It's like the lost and found bin of entertainment. You're like, great, another show about people who love cake. Now, despite these numbers, you often hear the idea, these kids wouldn't be in trouble if they just took some responsibility. But they're trying to be responsible. They're investing in education, and they are trying to pay their loans back. And yet many borrowers are still treated like dead. The government has put their financial futures in the hands of predatory, for-profit loan servicing companies. Companies like Navient and other companies you will hear from today have a history of misleading borrowers and pushing them into repayment plans that in some cases have cost individual borrowers tens of thousands of dollars in unnecessary interest. And the worst part is, borrowers don't even get to choose their loan servicer. The Department of Education chooses for you. So there's no competition that makes these companies service. Now look, we know the deck is stacked against student borrowers in ways that it wasn't 10 or even 15 years ago. And they deserve some basic protections. Americans should not have to go bankrupt pursuing higher education, and they should never be preyed upon by underregulated loan servicing companies. So members of this committee, we know the government is capable of stepping in during a financial crisis. So really all I'm asking today is, why can't we treat our student borrowers the way we treat our banks? Because 44 million Americans, that is too big to fail. Thank you so much for your time, and I will now go back to where I came from.
Thank you, Mr. Minaj.
So yeah, you got a break from my voice, and you got to hear that lovely argument. He's really funny. He has his show on Netflix if you want to watch it. So yeah. And the next thing I'm going to get into is climate change. Of course, we all know what climate change is. We've all heard so much about it. It's all over the news. So I'm just going to kind of remind you that it exists with some cool stats from NASA. So the average surface temperature on this planet has increased by 1.62 degrees Fahrenheit since the 19th century. So that's since pre-industrial levels. And we're rapidly approaching the 2 degrees Celsius threshold set by the United Nations, which is basically like if the surface of the planet increases by 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels, climate change is going to be irreversible. And the next thing is sea levels have risen by 8 inches, which isn't just damaging marine habitats, it's also damaging cities. So that's everywhere from Miami to Venice. So we're seeing a loss of human life as well as a loss of human history and culture, which is really, really painful, especially for me as a young person, because that's history that I'm never going to get to learn about again. Venice historical buildings are being destroyed, and I'm never going to get to take my children there because it's not going to be around for them. And the next thing is that oceans are becoming 30% more acidic, which is, of course, damaging to marine life from the basic things like algae and seaweed all the way to fish and coral. And we also have more severe weather events. And, of course, you guys have seen these things. You watch the news. We're a well-informed community. So we have Dorian to Michael to Maria to Imelda in Houston, which it's incredibly painful to see such a significant loss of human life. And even where I live in Grapevine. You know, Grapevine Lake is flooding with increasing regularity, and it's causing millions of dollars of damage. You know, the memories I made playing soccer aren't going to be available to other children because those areas are being destroyed. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on is mental health. So all of these stats are from the American Psychological Association. So the first thing is that Generation Z, when compared to other adult cohorts, they are the least likely to report very good or excellent mental health. And then speaking of kind of the major stressors, we have School shootings. So 3 in 4 Gen Z children report school shootings as a significant source of stress. And that's really painful because education in this country isn't just a right, it's an obligation. We have truancy laws. You have to go to school and get an education, but you're not safe when you go to school. And that's an incredibly damaging fear, having both severe weather drills and fire drills, but also lockdown drills where you have to learn how to hide in case someone decides that they want to harm you. And then 53% of Gen Zers report sexual assault as a major source of concern, and this is compared to 39% of other adults. We've seen a lot of talk about sexual assault in the media lately. Some really startling figures have come out, and that's definitely causing some damage to our mental health. And then the last thing that I'm going to get into is that 91% report experiencing physical or emotional symptoms of stress in the last month. But I do have to mention that one of the reasons why these figures can be so high is because mental health awareness in this country is on the rise. And that's a great thing. That's a beautiful thing because it means that more people are seeking help. And actually, Gen Z, we're the most likely to seek help for mental health issues, which is incredible. It's a good thing because it means suicide rates can go down and people can get the help they deserve for all sorts of concerns like anxiety, depression. So that's really cool. So I've talked a lot about our current challenges and the things we're struggling with and what our future looks like. But this is how we're creating change. So the first thing is Greta Thunberg. I'm sure you've all heard about her. She spoke to the UN recently, and she also came to the United States and spoke to Congress. She's been all over the news media. She is a 16-year-old Swedish girl. She rose to prominence through her school strike. So she was missing school to strike in front of the Swedish parliament. And that was last year. And this year, 2 weeks ago, we had the major school strikes all across the world. Even here in the United States, we had millions of students protesting, which was really cool. My school actually went on strike. I was unable to go because I was sick, but students from my school went to Fort Worth and stood among hundreds of other students protesting climate change, which is really cool. Yeah. And then the next organization I want to highlight is Students Demand Action. Students Demand Action rose to prominence after the Parkland shooting in 2018, and it's spearheaded by Parkland survivors. So they're advocating for gun sense legislation in the United States. And they're not just big in communities struck by school shootings like Denver and Florida. They're also big in really rural cities. I have a friend who lives in Canton, Georgia, which is a tiny little town about 40 minutes from where my mom was born. And they have a huge Students Demand Action chapter. My friend actually went and spoke on the floor of the Georgia State Legislature protesting for gun sense laws. So millions of American students are actually involved in this organization, which is very cool. And then, not to reveal my political bias, but I'm sure you all know what it is, the last organization I want to talk about is Turning Point USA. So they are an anti-women, anti-veteran, anti-working class, anti-everything except for Donald Trump organization. So they are advocating for change. It's change we're not necessarily a fan of, but they are a Generation Z organization. Their founder was a millennial, though, so I'm going to blame him. But yeah, I have to mention them. And I actually, my dad pointed this out to me after I'd already sent my slides in. Malala, who obviously advocated for women's education, not just in the developing world, but also here in the developed world, having equal education opportunities for women. She was born in 1997, so she qualifies to be a Gen Zer. And then the very last thing I'm going to touch on before I'm kind of wrap it up and give you guys the opportunity to ask me questions is Gen Z culture. Gen Z kids are very confusing. So I thought if I'm going to talk about our challenges and what our future looks like, I might as well try to bring some understanding to what's wrong with us. So the biggest question I get from older individuals is, what does yeet mean? And I'm not super sure, so I actually had to look it up. I use it all the time. I text my friends it, I say it in passing, I say it in the hallways. So this is the very official Urban Dictionary definition. It's an exclamation of excitement, approval, surprise, or all-around energy often issued when doing a dance, move, or throwing something. So does that clarify things? Not really. Clear as mud. And then ye is an abbreviated yeet. Sometimes it means yes, I think. It might also refer to Kanye West, who is a Gen Z icon, but also a monster. So he rebranded himself as Ye or Ye, so Ye may also refer to him. And then Ya Yeet. I don't know. I'm sorry. If I figure it out, I'll tell you. I'll come back up and explain on stage. But unfortunately, as of today, I don't know. I'm sorry. Oh no. It's not letting me click. I'm sorry. There we go. No. Memes. Memes actually have a very serious origin. The term meme was coined by Richard Dawkins when he wrote his theory of memetics, and he basically stated that similar to genes, how they're bits of information that can be transferred from one person to another and adapt and change and randomly mutate over time, memes do the same thing. They're little bits of information that change and spread like a disease. So I found some Tumblr posts that kind of sum it up. Gen Z culture is having a deep understanding of meme culture, but simultaneously being unable to explain it to anyone or yourself. In the far right, we have saying I want to die and getting a chorus of same big mood in me is Gen Z culture. Gen Z culture is very nihilistic right now because there's a lot of fears for what's going on in the world. It's a very scary time to be alive. I'm sure it's not as scary as some other times to be alive, especially during World War II and the Cold War, but we're at a stage where information spreads so rapidly that we're able to kind of like marinate in that fear and just kind of sit in it. In the bottom middle, that's actually Buzz Aldrin, believe it or not. Yeah, he has his tongue sticking out and he's wearing those like kitty cat headphones. He's a Gen Z icon because we're in an era where he walked on the moon and people are denying it happened. So he's in a little bit of pain, just like all of us. Actually, that image, I cropped it, but he's standing next to a cardboard cutout of Ariana Grande. And then in the top center and in the bottom left, those are actually the reaction memes. This one is actually me talking to my cat about how much I love him, and then my cat not understanding and being afraid of me. And then we have SpongeBob, who's been a meme lately. Here he is, dressed like a lovely French woman in front of the Eiffel Tower. Do I know why? No. But do I like it? Yeah. And then the last one is a reaction image that's also used on Twitter. So what do I take away from this? I gave you a lot of information. I whined about the College Board. I showed you guys some very terrifying memes. So what are you supposed to take away today? Basically, what I want you guys to have is a little bit of a greater understanding of the youngest among us. Because there's not a huge Gen Z population in this church, and those of us who are here are typically upstairs in religious education. So we're becoming adults now. We're entering the workforce. The oldest among us are graduating college this year and joining the workforce. I'm graduating high school and going on to college, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to pay for it. And I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to buy a house and have children because I'm not going to be able to afford it. And I'm afraid that there's not going to be a climate for me to live in. I'm afraid the planet is going to be uninhabitable. But we're also doing a lot to change that. So I want you guys to walk away today feeling like the future is in somewhat capable hands, and to understand that we're doing our best with the cards we've been dealt. So yeah, thank you for your time. Do you have any questions? You can ask me anything.
We're taking college donations.
Yeah.
Why 1997?
I actually don't know. So here in the U.S., kind of the big demarcation is whether or not you can remember 9/11, which 1997 has kind of been cut off. Like anyone born before it might have some like weak memories about it. And then we have other things like Columbine has defined that. So kind of the defining events that I talked about. But yeah, 1997 was kind of just an arbitrary line drawn in the sand. And especially when you get close to that, it gets hard to differentiate between millennials and Gen Zers. And we're kind of reaching the end of Gen Z, getting into, I think it's Gen Alpha is the next one. I don't know. But yeah, their younger children have had different lives from older children. So yeah.
Yeah, what's the impact of the cell phone? Because, I mean, we go out in the public and what we see is a group of young people, they're not talking to each other. They've all got their phones, and they're all doing this. In fact, they don't even talk, right? They don't, and there's a couple issues. One is, what is just a pure impact? Secondly, are we fostering a degradation in ability to communicate with other people?
It's actually funny that you mentioned that. The cell phone is actually increasing children's ability to communicate with one another, because literacy is actually increasing, by the way, because children, because they're on their phones all the time, they're using it to communicate with other people. I don't just use my phone to look at funny cat videos. I use it to keep in touch with my friends all around the world. And I'm constantly in communication with my friends. So we're actually communicating more with each other than we ever have before, and we're engaging with literature more than we ever have before. You're required to be literate to use a cell phone because you have to know how to read your settings and how to read your Instagram notifications. So I don't think there's necessarily a degradation in communication and the spread of information. I think it's more... I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I think there's a greater increase in the filter we put between ourselves and other people. And it's not just Gen Z. My dad uses his phone more than I use mine. I want to call him out on that. We walk around town, and he has his phone directly, like, he walks like this. Why? You can't see. But yeah, I do think there is sort of a decrease in face-to-face communication amongst young people that we need to be aware of. But I do... Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking to us on the climate change issue. We all are more informed than most people, and we all, I'm sure, recycle and do what we can. But what would you advise the older generation to step up the game as far as action?
The biggest thing we can do today is challenging large corporations, because the current movement places a lot of blame on consumers. And I think I've actually done a presentation on this before, but targeting consumers isn't beneficial, because most waste isn't post-consumer waste, it's pre-consumer waste. So it's, as a people, not just as old people and young people, it's working together to place pressure on corporate America so they have to change how they act. Because you vote with your dollars is the thing. The products you buy are votes. You know, you're voting that I like this product, I like how it's produced. So it's doing our best to place pressure on the people who are actually largely contributing to climate change, and working your best to get everyone involved. Because I think young people are very nihilistic, because they're like, well, I don't have a future anyways, because I'm not going to be able to go to college, and there's not going to be a climate. Why would I want to do anything? And some older people are like, I'm tired. You know, I've kind of reached the point where it's the next generation's problem. But it's all of our problems, so... I'm going to go you and then you.
You know, I mean, because, like, I'm about, 10 years older than you, but I'm on probably all the same platforms that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you're being advertised to at a ridiculous rate now? Like, being told to be a really rabid consumer even way with climate change? Because that's definitely what I'm feeling.
Advertising is also becoming more covert, especially with social media. They're able to kind of sneak their claws into any post you see, into anything you do. But I think one of the cool things about this generation is there's also a counterculture against consumerism, both with Greta Thunberg, but also like things like thrifting and reducing your waste. And as much as we all hate Visco girls because they're so annoying, the whole Save the Turtles thing and the kind of like idea of reducing your waste is really cool. So I do think like consumer culture is definitely something that's being pushed on us all the time. But I think the incredible thing that social media is also doing is increasing our awareness of it.
Yeah, that's cool. I just was curious.
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, because you just want to watch the news and then there's an ad. So you and then you.
You kind of answered my question, but having a teenager and a preteen that has meat on their door, and I was going to ask if you were a VSCO girl, because I actually had to research what VSCO was, because my kids, I know the answer now.
Yeah, I'm not a VSCO girl. I've got a scrunchie, but
What are you wearing on your feet?
Vans.
Okay.
Yeah, no Birks. We'll get there one day. Oh, they're like, it's the new version of Basic. They've got scrunchies and hydro flasks and reusable straws, and they wear really short Lululemon shorts and then like a really big baggy tee on, and then they go, I'm not going to make the noise, I can't. Yeah, they hiss like a snake. It's weird. And then they say, and I oop. Okay. Yeah.
And I am so fascinated by this thing where I totally agree with you about the and everything. I mean, probably the icon of counterculture for my generation was Lady Gaga. Like I was like
Yeah.
so into I mean that's still my big thing, and I love the way she's kind of like different and kind of against everything. Imagine my surprise when I get to when I get to my Gen Z coworkers, and they are and I didn't actually realize that Turning Point was considered a Gen Z thing. What is the deal with the movement against the with conservatism within Gen Z? The only thing that I can surmise is that there's an attraction to the conservatism offers a lot of really clear, easy, structured answers for people. But oh my gosh, they're these really cool. They're like my coworkers. They're really cool kids sometimes, and then they're like they don't understand the importance of counterculture the other times, and it's just like oh my gosh.
Yeah, you have kids that are like, they seem really on it with pop culture, and then you're like, you're a Trump supporter? What? Yeah, I definitely think conservatism it offers easy solutions, and it gives you something to be mad about, you know? God, I don't like him putting chemicals in the water that turn the frickin' frogs gay, you know? If any of you guys have seen that Alex Jones video. And I do think that counterculture, it's interesting because what was once counterculture is now mainstream.
That's because she was a big deal when she came on. The fact, like, even Madonna and Cher were talking about gay marriage.
Yeah.
And she comes out, and it was a big deal. And now it's like she's an old news, which I love her. That doesn't change. She's like old news, which is
Yeah.
fine. Like, I get that. Like, and I'm cool with not being cool anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. What I'm struggling comprehending is that a lot of the problems that we're dealing with today, student debt, climate change, all of the foundations and radical conservative neoliberalist principles, where everybody's focused on their own selves and not thinking about their larger, broader communities. And it just fascinates me that they're so into this doctrine that's like the exact opposite of what they need to actually be doing.
Yeah, it's crazy. Gen Z is going through a really painful time. We're doing our best, I promise.
Is there a Gen Z person who's running for president that stands out?
All Gen Zers are under the age of 35, so none of us can run for president right now. I'm sorry. We're trying. If we could, we would. Most of us can't even vote. I get to vote in the next election. Yeah.
Something I've noticed is that, with Greta Thunberg and kids from Florida, school shooting there,
Mm-hmm.
your generation seems to be a lot more to direct action than the past couple of generations. Is that something where you're beginning to be disenchanted with traditional democracy because it's so managed? Or is it a social media thing? Is it because you're in closer contact with people in Europe and other places where direct action is a regular part of life that you joined in on that too? Or is it something else that I'm replacing?
It's a little bit of both. So social media obviously increases our awareness of current issues. And there's a big trend, especially on Instagram, to always be latching onto the next bit of activism. People are always wanting to seem like they're doing something. But also what's interesting is the Pew Research Center found that while Gen Z kids are more likely to go to a protest or to go out and do something, they're less likely to vote than any other generation. I know, because there's this kind of sense of like, well, it doesn't matter. The last election, it didn't matter. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and still Trump got it. And it's like, we also feel this kind of sense of frustration, especially with the other generations. Millennials do a lot of whining, but not a lot of work. And then baby boomers are more conservative, and there's this frustration where it's like, it doesn't even matter if we vote because nothing's going to happen, which I don't personally believe that, for the record. I'm voting, but...
I have a grandson that turned 18 in February.
Yeah.
He's going to college right now. The day he turned 18, his teachers advised him to get a voter registration. So he has a voter registration, and the thing that media has done for him and what Trump has done for him has made him a radical, pro-immigrant feminist.
Yeah.
So I think Trump has done a lot to affect that turnaround for kids.
Yeah, and it's also that memes are definitely, they're no longer just SpongeBob dressed like a French woman. They're also history memes, and they're educational. Socialism is making a huge comeback, and I mean like big deal. Like half of the Instagrams that I get recommended are like socialist, Marxist fan pages. Like it's a little bit scary because it's very extreme, but also children are being exposed to these political ideologies more often and in more extreme cases. So yeah. Anything else? I feel like I'm running out of time.
I just want to say one more thing. I had a random thought this morning about a flashback from the founder of Friends of the Earth. I know he founded the League of Conservation Voters, and he actually came to Irving, Texas, and spoke 30 years ago about the environment.
Yeah.
Involved in some river in the west not being dammed, and someone asked him, how do you deal with all the frustrations of speaking out for the environment? His short answer was, say thanks to the caretakers. Say thanks to the Greta Thunbergs. That was my thought. I thought, wow, I should let her thank for being courageous to stand up and me too.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Quincy. I know I'm a parent of a Gen Zer, so I have all those fears for your generation. But I don't know if it's coincidental. You're speaking on the eve of the climate change walkouts, but I'm also hopeful for you and your generation. As we've received, so we're asked to give. Please use the offering envelopes provided. Green envelopes are for pledges or gifts to Pathways. Gold envelopes are for donations to our outreach partner. And please note that this is the last Sunday of the quarter, so this is your last opportunity to donate to Need as our outreach recipient. Oh, typo. I'm sorry. Mid-Cities Care Corps as our outreach recipient. Our outreach partner for the months of July, August, and September is Mid-Cities Care Corps. It was established in 1981 with a mission to preserve the independence of senior neighbors in Northeast Tarrant County. It connects clients with caring volunteers to provide 3 programs: transportation, light housework, and social outreach. Their Helping Hands program assists seniors with minor home repairs. We will now receive the offering. Thank you for your generous gifts, kindly and freely given this morning and by mail throughout the month to support this congregation and our outreach efforts. Your offering is truly appreciated. We hope that each of you, on your individual path through the joys and questions of life, found some common ground with your fellow travelers at Pathways here today. This week, we're highlighting our Pathways volunteers who serve as greeters, the first people you see when you walk in the door. Many of us remember feeling the warm feeling of welcome we felt the first time we came to Pathways. The greeters help newcomers as well as longtime members and friends feel welcome every Sunday. Volunteers who have served as greeters include Annette Briggs, Austina Harper, Glenn Harper, Jennifer Palmer, Carol Harvey, Becky McBurney, Terry Buckerfield, Eric Copeland, Glenn Weber, Robert Spence, John Atwood, Jenny Berry, and Marge Stockton. Thank you, greeters. As Quincy extinguishes our chalice flame, let us say these words together. We have problems here. Sorry, Quincy, we're not set up for you today. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. To all our first-time visitors, if you would like to learn more about Pathways, stay around after worship and talk with us. We'd love to meet you. Be sure to share your contact information with us at our welcome table in the foyer. If you like, sign up on our website for our weekly e-newsletter to be informed of events coming up at Pathways. There are meetings and events here at Pathways throughout the week. Here are just a few along with other announcements. For our full lineup, see the Pathways Weekly or the events calendar on our website, pathwaysuu.org. Also take home the order of service sheet on your chairs because it has the dates of upcoming events on the announcements side. The Pathways Women's Book Group will meet October 3rd and 17th at 1 p.m. to read and discuss Earning the Rockies by Robert Kaplan. Visitors and newcomers are welcome. We wanted to let everyone know that NTUC, First Jefferson UU, and Westside UU are coordinating a spot for all of us in the Fort Worth Pride Parade. Pathways is excited to join them for this event. The parade starts at 11 o'clock on October 5th. Please join us October 9th from 3 to 5 p.m. for open house at NEED. That's the Northeast Emergency Distribution. This is a come-and-go open house being held at both Hearst and Haltom City locations. This is an opportunity to see the role our church plays in this active community ministry. All are welcome. Our affiliates at U are eagerly waiting. Here are new fall event dates. You can find details, registration, and more at ubaru.org, their homepage. Nonviolent communication fall practice sessions and classes will begin in October. Contact Beth Wasson if you're interested in participating. And Beth isn't here right now. After the service, instead of our usual coffee and conversation, today we'll have a potluck. Please join us. Newcomers are welcome, and there's always plenty of food. We'll need help with setup and cleanup afterwards. Reminder to parents, please pick up your children from the nursery and RE immediately after Common Ground so all ages can share in the fellowship and food. And now, please stand as you are willing and able to join the choir in singing our closing hymn, We'll Build a Land.
We'll build a land where the captives go free.
Our benediction today is by Leila Gifty Akita. We can help the next generation with the stories we write today. Blessed be. Go in peace.